Hi.
Hi.
So, what would you like to talk about today?
Well, it sort of follows on from last time because it gave me an idea. Last time we were talking about numbers and
Yes.
about how we're ruled and governed
Yeah,
by
sorry, I'm just coming
numbers.
back.
And for me, a lot of numbers are to do with, well, if you want to give them a label, that fit in with my eating disorder or my OCDs, routines, a lot of them. And one number that dominates everything, not a specific number, but it's a unit of a number, the calorie, seems to have controlled all my adult life. When I was thinking about it, I was thinking about it while I was walking the other day, and again, to burn calories. From the age of 21, calories became the most important thing. Number.
And even the age is a number.
Yeah.
So, everything in your life you're seeing is defined by a number. The time that you got up to run, how many clocks you had with the numbers.
Yeah, 7 alarm clocks, but I have to check them in a certain way, so I have to check them. And I don't know where the numbers come from. They just come and they're so important. I had to check it in groups of 3 and then groups of 7. So it was 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and I had to do that 7 times. And then if it didn't feel right, do another 7. So it was 3 and 7, and
so all you're doing literally is counting numbers.
Yeah.
And you made it up with a made-up story that fit.
Don't know where they came from.
Yeah.
Don't know anything.
Well, and then that's what everybody else is doing. So calories are made up. Everything in nature, they don't have numbers. Animals are fit, like I've said before. They look very well. And here, quite often, people will say the way that we speak about speaking to use your own mind, be the adult. You know, the child running around in an adult's body is being the adult. So using your own mind is realizing there's a world outside of the program that everybody's told you, which people say this is the real world. You know, you have to be realistic. You have to, and it's all about survival. And so what people are saying is, I can't survive without somebody telling me what to do without being a child. Because if they stop doing what they're doing, I'll be okay. Do you see what I mean? And yet, and so we get rendered more and more useless. We get taken so far away from our human self that we don't know how to survive without certain things, without certain programs or what somebody else has introduced to us. So when you look at nature, that's the real world. That's the real world that's sane. But when you look at what we do, it's like, how ruled are we by numbers? You know, what time, like you said, the calories, what time you have to get up, how many times you have to count something, how many calories you can have, how many calories you can burn, what time did you do it in? Yeah. So you've got all these machines now that gives you a time.
Yeah.
And it keeps you distracted.
Yeah. I have to get up at a certain time so that I know that to burn a certain amount of calories, I have to burn a certain amount of calories before a certain time in the day. And then the second part of the day, I had to burn a certain amount. By the time I went to bed, this is what certain amount of calories that I had to do. And I knew how much everything I did, I knew what calorie, I gave it a calorie count. So I knew that if I went to the gym and did 3 spin classes or did 6 or did this, and I had to do so many hours a week, that was so many calories. And so I knew I could eat that many calories, I could burn that many calories. And it was always a calculation. It was always to do with numbers. And my level of, I wouldn't even say it was happiness or pleasure. My level of ease was about whether I'd met those numbers.
So you made a story up. I'm just kind of aware of this plant. So I'm imagining that plant listening to us thinking, wow, they're crazy.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because it doesn't have to do any of that, and yet it looks pretty green and full. Do you know what I mean? So it's not running around trying to survive anything. It's just doing its thing and just existing, and it's doing very well just existing in it. So, but it's that realization. So well, somebody's watering the plant, but they let off pheromones, don't they, to remind us to do that. So, but we don't believe that we'd survive by just doing what that plant's doing. And what you're saying is that ultimately, whatever you're doing really is a nothingness. Realistically, like the plant, it's nothing. Because you've made up a story and you're doing it all to yourself. So you're saying to put me at ease, I made a story up that was a story that put me at dis-ease. And then I made another story up to put me at ease. So ultimately, you're not doing anything other than to yourself. It's just about a story, telling an awful story and then telling a satisfactory story.
Yeah, I tell this story that calories are like really bad and really horrible, but I've got to have them. Then I tell myself another story that I've got to get rid of them, what I've already had, and that things will be better when I've got rid of them.
But they're not. And why will things be better based on calories? What will be better based on the calorie? What can the calorie do really to your life? How can it make it better? A number?
These are all questions that when you've got anorexia, you don't think about. You're just like, I've got to get that number lower. I've got to get that number lower. I've got to burn more. I've got to eat less. I've got to get them weighing scales less.
But the story's made up, so the anorexia is just about doing something that we're called anorexia. So it's like, people have different ways of doing things. Let's say you have anorexia, so why do we name it anorexia? Because, well, 10 people did this thing and they will give it a label. Okay. And then the other one, well, what do people do with that thing they do over there? Well, 10 people have a story up that they make up for OCD, so they do that. So we're going to name that OCD because they're doing the same thing and they're doing the same thing. But if they step outside the box, what can we call it then? Because you've experienced that before, being outside a box of what we call things. We don't fit that criteria. Because now we put you in a box, now you have to fit into a box. And so, but ultimately, when you think about, well, there's a bigger box that everybody fits in. Majority of people fit into the bigger box, which is called the box of numbers. So when you get out of that box and you get out of that box, you're still in a box. You're still in a prison within your own mind. Or somebody put you there. Or somebody invented numbers.
Yeah.
And they invented numbers as a very good trap. And so you might think you're getting out of this box and out of this box, but ultimately you're still in a box of numbers.
Yeah, because the treatment that I had was all about getting to a different number, which they said were healthy, so we're getting to a minimum BMI,
so you're not going to get
a
out of
minimum
numbers.
weight, and I couldn't get out of anorexia until I got to that point. And as soon as I got to that point, it was, you're out of it. But I hadn't changed mentally; just the numbers had changed.
Yeah, but then so numbers can be changed.
They gave atypical anorexia as a label because for the new box that I was in, and yeah.
So it's all made up, even the name anorexia. People are just making things up as they go along. We're just making more and more stories up to take us that far away from our humanness. We don't know who we are. We think that with these labels, we think that with these stories, it's our thinking that's the problem. Because that's what majority of people are trying to get away from their own thinking. They've taken in that much mental health, mental illness, that when they go quiet, all they can hear is all the crap that's been injected into their heads. And it's not pleasant. I don't know, do you know anybody that constantly has excellent, good thoughts that they chose to think every single day? They don't. So, and yet people are running around with these thoughts in their head thinking that, well, this is the real world, this is normal. It's like, really? Well, it's got to be the real world of evil then. In the world of good and evil, Satan must have won. In biblical text, Satan must have won because everybody's doing as somebody else told them to. And they can't make a human being themselves, so it's kind of an arrogance. In our made-up stories are very arrogant. The superior stories, inferior stories, all of these stories, and it's like, how do you figure out which one of those stories are true? You'd have to say they're all a lie then, wouldn't you? Because like you believed in anorexia nervosa because you manifested it. You manifested everything. You believed in it. You believed in the numbers. You believe in the calories. You believe in that because somebody else manifested it as well, and somebody else manifested, oh, well, we're all doing it, so it must be true. If a load of people say something, does it make it true, or is it just that a load of people are saying it? Do you see what I mean? Then you think you're out of that box, and then you go into another box. So it's like you're in this maze, and you're trying to get out of the maze, and you think, oh, well, I've gotten out of it, but you've gotten deeper into it because now, oh, there's a bigger picture going on. Now I've got to get out of the maze of numbers. Yeah. What if they're in the maze at all? What if the maze is just there because it's all made up? Because it has to be done there. Because why is the world so noisy that we're constantly being hammered and programmed with nasty stuff, dangerous stuff? Everything about nature's dangerous, we're being told. There's got to be something playing out. You know, when you look at the bigger picture, you think, is the government even playing out? And evil's won? Is that what's happened? And why?
Nature's survived without numbers, hasn't it?
Look at nature; it survives and thrives without numbers. Without us, we're the ones that we damn nature. How many weather warnings? The weather's just doing its thing. We should be the warning to nature, not the weather warning. Oh, the sun's going to do this year? No, it's not. No, it's not going to do that unless we've made it up. Why would something create us? And anything else on the planet, anything, I don't know all these animals that get skin cancer from the sun. Do you? I don't know that. I've never heard of that. Snakes, they don't put lotion, chemicals on the skin. It's the oddest thing. Put this chemical on your skin, put it in your body, it'll make you well, and we'll give you another chemical to make you well. It doesn't make sense, does it? And yet all these creatures on the planet seem to manage without it. The nature, whoever, I can't make a song. Could you know anyone that can make a song? I don't know. I don't know who can make an earth, who can make plants, who can do all that. Whatever created them is being insulted by our made-up stories that we're superior. We can save the world, but it's like, not in chemicals that are damaging it. Is that really what's happening? But we always blame some. It's, you know, because if they just stop doing that, I'll be okay. Isn't that just the, you know, as Freud said, the mentally ill don't know it. Isn't it just the narcissism in our condition? And so, can you see that narcissism, that focus in on almost loving to hate yourself?
And it uses numbers as a tool to do that, to measure you by this ruler.
Yes. And who's the ruler of us? We're always doing as we're told. It's like, who is this person that we're doing? No human being's made better than we're not made. We are life itself. Everything is life. And yet, somebody built a hierarchy, a made-up hierarchy, that we're superior over everything else. Somebody said the other day, oh, that dog's spoiled. How do you know? You're not gaslighting the dog. The dog's not spoiled. It's got a noose around its neck. How can it be spoiled with a noose around its neck?
You know what I love about my dog? He doesn't do anything that I tell him to. Yeah. And I find it so funny because he's got his own mind and I let him have it. Who says I haven't trained him properly and that he's naughty and that he's not doing as he's told and all this. But if I said to him, Chester, sit down, he'd look at me and walk off.
I've got
and I love it. It makes me laugh that he'll just do what he wants.
Well, I've got a story to tell, so I'm going to tell this story.
Okay.
Okay, and it's where the way that we look at things, the way that we look at the world, and so some people say, well, I can only believe what I can see. Yeah, so let's say our eyes are meant for seeing, but we don't see. We have our eyes wide shut sometimes. So anyway, there was this man, and he used to greet people. So I'm going to make this story up. So this man, and it's a bit of a crude story, so people remember. So remember that because this is No-Frills. So yeah. So there was a man, a young man, and he was in like a social area, you know, where people are socializing with each other. A very nice man, but revealed himself, you know, a little bit too much to people in terms of some of his habits. Anyway, he used to go up to people and he'd greet them, and he'd put his hand out and shake their hands. I want you to shake my hand and say hello. And then he'd stroke your face. Yeah. And that's what he did. That was his habit. He'd shake your hand and stroke your face. And then, so we sat down and, you know, in this social event, and these people were all getting on. And anyway, the young man had gone to the toilet, and another man had gone to the toilet a few minutes after him. And he'd witnessed him, you know, and he'd witnessed him thinking, wow, that's a bit, you know, unhygienic. So the man in his mind, the young man who was going to the toilet, and he didn't wash his hands, and he noticed that he had something on his hand, but he'd not washed his hands. So he didn't say anything to him. He said, you know, but he kind of left it, but realised, you know, I'll be mindful about shaking his hands because I've just seen his habits as you would be. So anyway, he went out, and as the young man were greeting people, he felt kind of weird because he knew that he'd not washed his hands. He had something on his hands, and he'd not washed his hands. And he put his hand, you know, so he was putting his hand out to everybody, and he wanted to shake their hands. Do you want to shake my hand again? And he wanted to touch the face, and you kind of like stuff there. So you're making me reach out.
Yeah.
Do you want me to? So you don't like being touched. I'm aware of that. So, but anyway, what happened to these people was that he told them, you know, he's not very hygienic in the toilet. He didn't really wash his hands and things like that. So anyway, as he was telling this story to people, there were one of, you know, as he were telling him, he said, oh, he didn't really wash his hands, but because they had the story in their mind now, he went to shake their hand, and they didn't want to. Now, not because of him, because, and I don't know if you get this, not because of him, because once they told that story and said, now do you want to, and he said, do you want to shake my hand? Nobody wanted to even shake his hand. Why do you think? Because what they were seeing is they were looking at his story, but they weren't looking at his hand to say, well, you wash your hands. They stuck in their mind was the story of the man who didn't wash his hands. And so the story, because they had that story in their mind, they were feeling it in their body. Their body was stimulated, and they were feeling that action in their body because now he had taken them out of the present moment and took them into the story. So when he went to touch them, they originally, you know, they reacted and went like that. Does that make sense?
Sort of, yeah.
Okay. So how we react then when we see things is like Pavlov's dogs. That what Pavlov realized was when the bell rang to bring the food, the dogs were aware that the food were coming. Not because of memory, because once they had that story, their bodies were stimulated. So they began to salivate. They salivated before the bell rang. So that what was happening with that story of the young man is that their body now was reacting to, you know, what was on the young man's hands. That their body, when he went to touch the face, naturally, and not even checking what's in your hand. So the reason why I'm saying that, and I hope it's just, I hope it, you know, it makes sense a little bit to you. The reason why I'm saying that is because when people say, I will believe something when I see it, it's no, you won't. You will believe something when you're directed to see it, depending on what the story is. That's what you will believe. Like people believe things about people they've never met in other countries because they are directed to do that. When you watch the news, the newsreader has just given you a story and then given you an image, and you see what that newsreader has told you to see. You do not see the bigger picture. So you can hate somebody based or love somebody based on a story that you have in your own mind, but it's not what you see with your eyes, these eyes. It's what you see internally. It's how you interpret it. Because we interpret things from stories, not from the real truth. So that's why, how did you get into being programmed with numbers and seeing things? Because everywhere we go, somebody else is going to tell us about numbers. And you're going to believe their story. So then when you stand on the scales, it's not the number that you see in the present moment that you've got in your mind. It's a judgment voice. There's already a story put there. How do you know that story is true? Because there might be another story about the person who told you that might have a label that's made up equally. And as human beings, we think that we're intelligent. We're not. We just believe in everything that somebody else tells us with either a made-up name or a made-up costume on. So the whole thing then, therefore, has to be made up. So that's why when you say about calories and numbers, we can shift numbers at any time. Anytime we like, we can shift numbers around.
So, for example, like if I were getting weighed, even before I look and see what the number is, or before I even stand on the scales, I've already told myself it's not going to be good enough and it's going to be too high.
Exactly.
And it's not going to be what I want, and it's not going to be good enough in what I term as good enough. As in, it's going to be too high, it's not going to be low enough, it's not going to be at a number that I feel is acceptable, that it should be, that I've preset for no good reason. I've just picked a number and thought, this is what it needs to be, and I will not be happy until I get there.
But even though it was a number that you would look at and say, well, 4 stone is pretty thin, well, it still wasn't good enough for you.
No.
So you never got to the number that was good enough to change the feeling, because it was just a made-up story. So actually your body tells you the truth and the ego lies. And if your body does it and my body does it, and that's how the bodies are made, then who do you know is telling the truth then? And then how do you know science isn't made up? Well, it has to be.
Because that voice in my head, the ego, so part of me, or part of the external world that I'd interpreted as me, or at one point I thought it was demons or whatever it was, I didn't question much where it had come from or anything. I didn't question anything. I just knew it was there. It would quite have happily killed me, because it was always not good enough. If I ate 100 calories a day, it was still too many. If I burnt 1,000 a day but only ate 100, it still didn't balance out. It was very destructive, and it didn't care.
No, and when you see your society,
it made numbers.
Yes.
Not make sense, but it made sense, if that makes sense.
It does, because you see how that's insanity, where the insane or another insane. That the insanity is that when you everything that you're purchasing, like such as a watch or whatever, oh, this watch tells me how many steps I've done, because now I'm electing to be judged.
Yeah.
I'm going to pay for an item. So look, I've got my judgment item on. Yeah, look, I've got my judgment item on my watch. This is my judgment item, unless I use it, unless I don't use it for that which I don't. But it's that where you have your judgment item on. How many steps did you do today? Oh, this is how many steps I did today. So it's exactly the same story you did in your mental illness, but only now it's been advocated as a good thing. How many numbers in a minute is my heart beating? How many numbers of that? How many numbers of this have I done? How many numbers of miles have I done? How many, I've done the marathon. How many numbers have I done? Am I good enough? I'm good enough for something else. That when you, I think years ago they used to call it, when we do something to serve another person and we have to shout about it, we're called hypocrites. You are a hypocrite. If you give to another and you need an audience to give to another, you're a hypocrite, because you're not doing it genuinely. You're doing it to aggrandize yourself, to stroke your own ego.
Yeah, look at how many things are on Facebook. I've done this, I've helped this person, I'm doing this for this charity.
Why should you have to shout out who is going to give you your prize for shouting out, and it's your ego, it's your own ego that does it, and that takes us away from, that we have to be stroked or aggrandized to do something good, because is that how bad we've got? That we need praising to do something good, that we just can't do it without any acknowledgement from it.
Everybody know, look, I'm doing something good, I'm a good
Yeah,
person.
look at me. That means that if I have to advocate I'm a good person, there has to be something inside of me that's saying I'm not. And whatever goes on inside, like when people have judgments, upon other people, it's because of their own levels of judgments that they have inside themselves that they're trying to escape from. So when people are trying to escape from shame, they'll constantly point out shame amongst others. Oh, they should be ashamed of themselves. That's their level of shame within themselves that they're hiding from.
And it just made me think, we are really, as with that, really contradictory, aren't we? Because I was just thinking that, like if I do like a talk or a workshop or something like that, I might, or anybody else who's doing some kind of group work or something, you want people to feel comfortable to contribute and this, that, and other. So, well, people might say, oh, we're non-judgmental here and that. But then at end, you ask them to be judgmental because you give them a feedback form and saying, just judge me. Just judge me. I'm asking you not to be judgmental, but now I'm asking you to judge me.
Yeah.
And you tell me if I were acceptable or not.
Yeah.
To you.
Yeah. And then
it doesn't matter. I might be perfectly acceptable, but you tell me if I've met your standard or I'm worthy of your.
Yeah, but that's why the world is you pushed out, because it's not really about them telling you whether you're good enough. It's about them satisfying your ego. Because if every one of them wrote down that you were bad, you'd be upset.
Well, I never do feedback forms, but I know once I was asked, you must do, or told, you must do feedback. I'm like, I don't want feedback forms. I'm saying we're non-judgmental, but then I'm saying, here, judge me.
But when you had feedback forms or somebody gave you feedback, it wasn't their judgment about you, it was yours. It's not somebody else's judgment about us. The world is us pushed out. It's about our judgment. If somebody says something negative to you, it's none of your business. That's, like say, if you've got shit in a bag, that's all you're going to get out of it. It's none of your business. As a metaphor, I'm not saying anyone is that, but, and it's only if I agree with them that it hurts me. If my judgments are ticked that I agree with, that the judgments that I was given when I grew up, and if somebody says something to me about my judgments, so say for instance, let me use the word colour. So when I were called names when I was young, growing up, about the colour of my skin, it was only because at that young age I believed these people that I was less than because of the colour of my skin. And it was only when I got older that it was actually, that is your evil. Do you see what I mean? You're projecting your nastiness onto me, and what comes out of your mouth is nothing to do with me. It's got nothing to do with me. That's to do with your story that you have got about the colour of my skin, and your story about judgments, and your story, a made up story about superiority. But that's got nothing to do with me, because when you look at it, say like we're looking at that, for instance, it would be that, my ancestors were called savages. It's like, but you were the ones that were the murderers, the rapists, you were the ones that did worse than Hitler did. You were the ones that did that in this country. So who are the savages then? But when you look at things in a certain way and you believe that, you are the judger of you. So when I was young, it hurt my feelings because I believed that of me. But now it's like, when you look, that what's coming out of you, your actions are nothing to do with me. That's your stuff. Yeah, do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what you do with feedback. So feedback really is, tell me how good I am. Don't tell me how bad I am, because if I agree.
Or we can interpret it the other way around, because I used feedback. And I think that's why I didn't want it, because I thought, I used to think, I don't want it because I know what they're going to say. They're going to say I'm crap. And if they say I'm good, it's just them being polite. And so it was like, it was...
your level of judgment.
Yeah, it was about me.
Yeah.
So whatever somebody had written down really didn't matter, because I would interpret it to fit my narrative, which was, I'm useless. And it's going to be, and I'm going to do it wrong, and it's going to be a disaster. So very contradictory. One, I'm saying we don't judge. Next, I'm saying asking, judge me. But I'm saying it doesn't really matter what you put, because I'm going to judge myself anyway, and I'm going to interpret what you say to fit my own narrative.
So we can't help, because we've been programmed with judgments against ourselves growing up. So actually, when we continue to carry those judgments, those judgments that we hear are the ones upon ourselves. So everything that we're doing is to ourselves. We say, well, they should change. It's like, no, we have to change ourselves. And then if somebody stands there and does whatever they do, you say, well, that's nothing to do with me. That's your stuff. Yeah, you're just revealing. Everybody's a billboard for themselves, just revealing what's inside of them. So ultimately, that's what we're doing, is revealing what's inside of us. And so what you did is reveal a story to yourself, and then reveal another story to get yourself out of the story that you put yourself into. So who is doing the world? You are.
Yeah.
And it's that way, and it's like, wake up to what you're doing to yourself. So people don't love themselves enough because they've been taught to hate themselves. They've been taught that they're not good enough. Only the ego. Now we're so much in our ego, not in our human self, in the left hemisphere. Then we're so much in the ego. We're constantly trying to prove our worthy. Well, I'm better than them because I've got more than them, or I'm better than them because
it keeps us very busy, doesn't it?
Yes.
Very busy.
But you have to ask yourself, why are we kept so noisy and busy? So we don't go quiet into our humanness and really hear who we are. We're too busy hearing the made up stories and going along with those. And that's what it is. And numbers is one of the big ones.
Yeah.
How do you feel after that?
A bit. Yeah. It just shows that we can live in an existence and get ourselves in knots and have big holes in the story we tell ourselves, but we patch things up and turn things round to make things make sense to us. And when I was, like you say, 4 stone with anorexia nervosa, everything made complete sense to me regarding calories, and even touching something that had calories in. No, I'm not letting that absorb through my skin. They were all very, very real and so important. But when you take a step away, you can see how mad it is, but how it made so much sense.
And that's why it says the 90% of the insane don't know they're insane. Yeah. Because when you hear that, we always think it's for someone else.
Yeah. It doesn't feel insane when you've got a mental illness.
No, instead of saying that's on about us.
Yeah.
That statistics is on about us. That was in the 60s, so now we're even worse with labels. And that was in the 60s, but we've normalized the ego story so much and gone so far away from ourselves that we barely believe this now. We think this is the real world. It's somebody else's made up story that we're going along with. So the children are adults running around in children's bodies having to survive the insane that are already here. And then we become the children running around in an adult's body, blaming everyone else.
Thank you.
You're welcome.